Hey there, I have a language hack that I'm really excited about, wanted to share with you. I think if you're studying a language, you probably use Google Translate or some other translation. You can use this with any translation app or website or whatever, but I'm just going to show it with Google Translate because I think that's one of the most common. Now, I've talked about Google Translate before because one cool way that I use it is to take a screenshot of like a comic or a magazine that I'm reading and then load it using the camera function into Google Translate. It'll translate the entire page. You can do that with ebooks too. That's cool. That's not what this trick is. This is something totally different because one of the problems when you study languages is making this transition from input to output because when you're starting to learn a language, when you're even up into intermediate level, you need to take in a lot of examples and get a lot of input. You need to hear, you need to read, you need to just experience a lot of different aspects of the language. And it's tricky because you need to start transitioning to output so you can start speaking and writing and creating actually making the language because that's going to be essential if you want to be functional as a person speaking that language. So this trick, or not really a trick, but this, I guess I want to think of it as like something in your toolkit. It's not going to be the only thing you use by any means. I wouldn't recommend using it either right away. I would say you need to kind of build up to it and probably be at least A2 level before you start using this. But at some point, when you want to start becoming more productive and focus more on your output, and maybe even before you actually get a language partner or teacher that you can speak with, I think this is a little less intimidating. It has a lot of benefits. So basically, what you're going to be doing is kind of forcing yourself to try to come up with sentences, and you're going to start with things that you are going to find most useful. Just think about what is it you want to say, what is it that's useful, and if you can't come up with things, another good way to use this is to just look for a list of the most common words in your target language, or just like in English, the most common words that are used, and make sure that you know how to use all those. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to first start off by just putting the word in, say a word like car. If you don't know how to say car, you're going to put it into Google Translate and translate it into your target language. And if you don't know what it is, then you'll know what car is. And then here's a very important thing, especially, I mean, I find what is important because I'm using it mainly with Thai right now, and Thai is a different writing system than English. So it's very important that I write it, and I'm writing it out by hand, not typing it. And yeah, so I will write out the word car, and then I will think about like, what is it I want to say about car? How can I make this in a sentence and start building it up, make it a little more complicated? So I might say something like, I have a car, and then write that out. And then I might say, I have a blue car, and add things to it, or the car is broken, things like that. And then if there's a word in the sentence, if Google Translate coughs up a word or an aspect of the sentence that you don't know, you can also reverse it and try and figure out what is that unknown. And this isn't, when I was a kid, I used to think that if you just had a dictionary of a foreign language, you could learn the language just by learning each word and figure out the words that you don't know. That's not how languages work, though. There's this thing called grammar, and meaning is very largely contained and within grammar. So it's not perfect, like I said. This is just something in your toolkit, but a lot of times you can figure out what certain terms are and what their role is in the sentence. But for example of how this won't always work, there is in Thai at least 9 ways, I think, of saying the word I. Just different ways. I tend to go to the default of Pom, but when I use Google Translate, it tends to default to, I believe, Chan, and that is more usually for women. So it's not perfect, and I tend to I'll substitute it in Pom, but that's just one example. But you don't need to focus on that. You can focus more on things like concrete things that you want to learn. Like I said, car. There tends to be one word that is most often used, things like that. So anyways, so start off with simple words, make it more complicated, use different forms. You can try using past tense, you can try things like that. But what I also want to suggest you do is that as you do this, you're going to add words that you don't know. But if you do like something like I have a car, and then you try a new word like a blanket, like if you learn the word blanket, and then you're going to try and make the sentence I have a blanket, instead of just putting it in and seeing what the answer is, guess. If you've already translated blanket, what is, you've already done I have when you did I have a car. So what is your best guess? And you don't need to write it. You can just say it, whatever that is in your target language. Say I have a car, and then translate it and see if you're right. You may be right, but sometimes Google Translate will translate it differently, even though you are still right. But it's good to learn other ways too. So if Google Translate tries a different way, learn that way as well. And yeah, so that's basically the gist of this idea. I find it very helpful. It makes me memorize things a lot more because I'm writing them out, and I'm also just forcing myself to think on my feet and zoom in on the words that I don't know. You can also, this is the final idea I have if you want to really play with this. And of course, think about your own ways that you want to tweak it. This is not set in stone by any means. But here's an idea is you can come up with a conversation and, for example, using my car example, let's say the first line of a conversation is, do you have a car, question mark, and translate that, write it out, then answer that. You know, the answer could be like, no, comma, I don't have a car, and then translate that if you don't know how to say it and write it out. And then keep the conversation going, ask another question, go back and forth. And then when you've translated, like, I don't know, let's say you have like 10 lines, then stop and cover up and go back to the beginning and read the first line and ask a question each time so that there's an answer, and then see if you can remember. You could probably remember the answer, and just see if you can, from memory, answer it without looking at what you've written. If you can't, no problem. Just uncover it and try it again, and work with it. And I find it very helpful because you're creating stuff on your feet, and very different from learning from a book or using an app where they just hand you all this material that isn't always relevant to things that you're interested in, things that you want to say. So just think about what is it, the situations that you're going to be in or that you want to know how to say. Vocabularies are huge, and they contain all kinds of different areas. And all these language apps and books are just trying to give you the most generalized forms, but you know how you live and you know what you're trying to learn your language for. So that's really your opportunity to focus on the vocabulary that you need in the things that you want to say. I hope you enjoyed this tip. If you have any suggestions for how you may want to use it, leave a comment. I'd love to hear about it, and be sure to subscribe for more language tips in the future. Thank you.